Alright, hello and welcome. This is building my first welding table. I'm outside in my front lawn right now in my driveway, and here's to begin with what I am starting. So I have all my scrap metal, or all my metal pieces here, and all my other pieces as well. Most of these, or this should count for pretty much everything on the build. You'll see I have, first of all, I have the angle iron there. That's a 12-foot section, 1 3/4 by 1 3/4, 1/8 inch thick. There I have the square tubing. I bought a 12-foot piece and they cut it in half at the shop. And I'm gonna end up cutting those each in half. So they'll be roughly 3 foot by 3 foot. And that's 2.5 by 2.5 square tubing, 11 gauge. The big tabletop I have there, that one I bought all by itself. It was pre-cut. A little expensive, but this is a one-time purchase, so I'm okay with that. That is a 1/4 inch thick, 30 inches by 48 inches, and it is hot rolled steel plate, mild steel. There I have a piece of scrap. You'll see where this one comes in later. I don't know how big it is or whether or not I'm going to be able to use it with those existing holes, or I'll have to just get another piece of scrap and make the holes myself. We'll see. So that's that. And there I have the casters. Those are 3-inch casters. I wanted to get the ones that had the top that fixed in with the 4 holes in it, but I couldn't find any that were small enough to be able to fit on the bottom of the square tubing. So I just went with the single bolt that goes all the way through, and with that I have the nuts that go on top of it. You'll see those are M10 1.25s. I got 4 of those. Had to be steel. They can be zinc plated, doesn't matter. Just can't be stainless or copper or anything like that, because I will be welding them onto this big plate as it is. And you'll see just some other things. I got cutoff discs. Also have my abrasive discs, flat discs, my grinder. This drill here, this drill bit, it's the closest to the M10 that I could find. And it has to be a little bit bigger than that when welding the nuts onto it. So the one I got was 3/8 inch big. And again, if these holes that are already in here aren't the right size, I'll just have to cut things to size and then drill the holes myself. So with that, unfortunately, I can say that I don't have a torch or a plasma cutter just yet. Those are going to be my next purchases. So I will be having the jolly old time of making all my cuts using my grinder. And that's it for this video. I'll be on to the next part of it. Okay, at this stage you can see that I finished cutting the square tubing. I forgot how good the expensive discs are, the expensive cutting discs that you get at Home Depot are. I'm so used to using the cheap ones that they buy us in the metal shop where I work. The ones that shatter if they hit even a little bit of a bump, and they don't cut worth anything. But these Diablo ones that they sell at Home Depot, oh boy. Yeah, now I remember why I got these things, why I use nothing but these at home, because these things really are worth the money. Anyway, the tabletop, I thought it was 48 by 30, and you can hear my dogs barking in the backyard. But it turns out it's actually not that much. So the width actually is 30. But the length is a bit more, and for the layout lines I just marked 4.5 inches from each side and used my speed square to do that. Now the square tubing, it's really not, because the casters I'm using to on the bottom can go up and down. It really doesn't matter if the cut is absolutely perfect there. It can have, 1/16 of an eighth, maybe even a little more off. It just has to be as close as you can get it, but doesn't have to be perfect. These are 3 feet and some change, maybe 3 feet and 1/4 or 1/16 off, give or take a little bit. But cutting this angle iron, this actually does have to be accurate because the pieces all have to fit together within this little section here. With the angle iron, I'm going to be having the flat side of it facing outward, with the L part, the kind of, I don't know what you call it, the three-dimensional part of it on the inside. So I'll be cutting it at a right angle eventually, but right now I'll just be cutting it in the straight lines to make it fit as much as possible. My initial cut's going to be a little bit longer, that way I can fine-tune it with the flat disc or the grinding disc. So here we go. This is just a quick measure of the angles that I cut. They're not going to be oriented this way, they're going to be oriented the opposite direction, with again the side that sticks out, the side that's going to be flush will be sticking out to the outside of the thing, and the other one, so basically they'll be oriented like all like this. But here you can see I'm just really measuring it to see if my cuts are right, because next I have to cut my right angles in this thing so that they all fit together, and that's what I'm going to do now. Again, just using a speed square and cutting it as close to the lines as possible. I'll be back. Now, the angle irons are all cut correctly, which is the good thing. The bad thing is that, as I expected was going to happen, they're not all meeting up properly like this. You see how this one here, they're met up, they're cut at 45-degree angles, and they meet up pretty correctly here and pretty close. But on the other sides, some of the sides, they meet up like this. I suspected this would happen on some of them, but just not to this extreme. So this is where the good old fun of grinding comes into place. So, gonna take a little break, get the grinder out, and start getting to work, getting these things to fit correctly. Okay, I finished all my grinding and all the pieces fit together well. Here's pretty much what I did. You can see the top, or the flat part of it, I trimmed it down a bit and put a bevel on it, and that made them all fit together pretty nicely. But also because I'm welding this, and I'll be welding it from the top and don't want to be welding just on butt joints, I also put some bevels in here using my grinder, and that'll help it fit together, or be able to be welded together nice and tight. So in the end, you'll end up with something that looks a bit like this. And there you go. It's all ready to be welded up now. The legs too, I still need to put the casters in the legs first before I put the legs in, and I want to put the legs in before I put these on. So I'll get to working on that. This is going to be the big bulk of the grinding and cutting, which is really where I wish I had my torch. Okay, now working on the casters. I had to abandon this plate here because it's just not feasible. The holes are not the right size, they're the wrong distance apart, so I just can't use that one, unfortunately. But fortunately, I did have another piece of scrap metal here. You can see I laid it out with a little grid here. The places here I'm going to end up cutting along this line here, and this line here, and this line here. So this length and this length, it'll end up making a 2.5 by 2.5 inch square that'll fit on the end of the square tubing. Right in the middle of that at 1 1/4, just use my drill press, my big drill press. I can't find the key for it, so I had to use my little one here. No big deal. 3 1/8 inch. So you see the caster here, it fits directly into this hole. I'm going to weld a nut here. Unfortunately, the nuts I got were the wrong size. They don't fit on there. But the idea is I'm going to weld the nut right on top of this hole. And then once it's cut out, I'm going to weld this with this side, or with the nut inside of the square tubing, weld it along, and that way this will be able to fit right there and screw right into it. But got to go back to the store and try to get the right size nuts. And after that, I'll be back and this will be the and cutting these out will be the very last part of my build. So, or of all the cutting that needs to be done. After that, we're just on to welding. All right, and there we have it. We have all the pieces that are cut and ready to go. Here's all the, here to recap, here's the square tubing. I got 4 pieces of it, all about 3 feet wide or long. Here's the big tabletop. It's about 30 inches wide by 48, and I think it's 3/4 inch long, along with the angle irons that are all cut accordingly and grinded down to proper fit and have bevels on them. The casters that'll go into these little squares here. The squares with the holes inside of them will fit on the end of one side of the tube here. Make sure to put them in the side that you cut, because the other side is machine cut, which means that it's more likely to be at a perfect right angle to be fit onto the tabletop. And go into the store to get the nuts that fit properly, and that'll just leave all the welding to do. That's it for day one. All this took maybe an hour and a half, about 1.5 hours. But that was also figuring out what to do and stuff, so that's about it. Okay, so here I'm preparing the legs for the casters. And what I'm doing, the idea is that the casters are going to go up inside and just kind of lay like that on top of it. So with that, I'm welding the nuts onto the back side of what will eventually go inside of the leg. Now, rather than risking trying to align the nut perfectly and missing and then it won't fit correctly, what I'm doing is I'm putting it inside here, tacking it, making sure that the tack is correct, and then I'm going ahead and unscrew the caster so I don't accidentally weld it inside of it, and then I'll go ahead and weld all the way around it. And what you'll end up with is something that looks a little bit like this. See, the caster will go on this side, and this part will be inside. Yes, it's ugly. I'm using gasless, self-shielded flux core, so yeah, guess what? It's going to be ugly, but I'm not yet set up to have the bottles in my garage yet. After all, this is my first project, so bear with me there. All right, I'll be with you on the next one. Okay, now that they're all made, we are going to simply get this side down. So to cover it, we are going to weld it. Very important, before you weld this thing on here, make sure that your caster will screw in all the way. The last thing that you want is to weld this thing on here and then figure out, hey, no, something went wrong with my weld and now my caster won't go through, and then I have to cut this whole thing out, and that'll just be a nightmare. So it's better to take your time, double check things, and do things correctly rather than have to go back and fix a mistake. Quality is important. It's easier to take your time and not make a mistake rather than actually going quickly and making a mistake. So you can go ahead and make sure that everything is tested out here. First, I'm going to make sure that the caster fits in all of them, all 4 of them. If it does, cool. I'll weld all the way around, clean it, then on to the next step. Well, took some effort on one of them that had some spatter on the inside of the nut. Other than that, all the casters fit inside. Cool. Now for the welding and cleaning. All right, so we're doing the legs. 3 of them are fine. This last one, pardon the welds. I know the welds are terrible, but this one here went through a little crooked. It's an issue. So I'm having to use my little crescent wrench to actually put it all the way in. Hopefully it's not an issue in the future. I don't know, I guess we'll see. It turns out that while turning it in, I broke the caster. So you see the caster is supposed to be attached right. One second. Well, bad luck. I put too much torque on it and I broke the caster. So the caster should be attached right here, But now, so that when you turn this thing here with the crescent wrench, the threads also spin. But now I'm just spinning the crescent part of it without the threads actually spinning, which means that these have become detached. So what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna go ahead and fill this here in with weld and see if that does the trick as far as connecting it. After repairing the caster, that's about as far as I could get it in. So hopefully it'll be fine. But this thing is not moving. I'm gonna paint this one leg, I guess, a different color than the others. That way I know that this leg here is gonna be the actual length or the height of the table, because this thing isn't going anywhere. All the other four or the other three legs are gonna have to be based off of this one right here, because that one's not going up, it's not going down. All right, and here's the table with the legs. It's all tacked up, ready to be welded. Everything is square. You can see parallel-ish, and a few degrees off. See, ish, and a few degrees off. Whatever. I don't think it'll make a difference. Ish, dead on. So they're all about the same. Now, just about welding it out. I'm gonna do some practicing with this wire because this thing is so hard to control before I actually do the final weld out, and then it's time to flip it over. It did not end up being the shape that I thought it would be, but hey, we'll see how it works. All right, after thinking about it, the legs are just way too close together. It's not going to be very stable. Easy fix. That's why I tacked it instead of welding it all out, just to see how the final product's going to be. Easy fix. I'm just going to instead move the legs from here on the inside of these things here to the outside. I wanted an overhang, and a significant overhang for plenty of clamping, but I didn't expect that much overhang to be there. So I think the issue was that I forgot to factor in the size of the angle iron into the overhang here. So, well, live and learn, I guess, but easy fix. Just retack them on the outside and see how that looks. Okay, as you can see, I retacked it. That looks a whole lot better, a lot more stable. It's gonna be clear though that I'm gonna need braces. I only want braces on 3 sides though. This side, so the 2 short sides and 1 long side is all I want the braces on, because I'm gonna need room for a stool and to be able to access the ground for the TIG pedal when I eventually get one. So I guess I'll have to look at my metals or my scrap metal and see if I have some angle iron to make some braces out of. Otherwise, it's off to the lumber yard or the metal yard. That's it. All right, the table is all welded out and mostly done, and here it is flipped up. It's a lot taller than I expected it to be. It's about 40.5 inches tall, so I don't know where my math went wrong there or what I did wrong, but hey, at least I won't have to crouch. The tables where I worked last were so short it hurt my back. So I'm almost done. I just have 2 more pieces to put on. Let me show you real quick. This little piece right here I had taken off of, it was part of the side supports. I believe it was this one here, this one here, this angle. So what I'm gonna do with this here is cut it in half. Place 1/2 right here just to close up this little gap here. Oops, didn't see that. So place 1 little part here to close up that gap. And of course on the other side, one to close up that gap and then just grind it down. After that, we will be all finished. So, finished product. You can see it comes up to my, where's the flip on this? I don't know. But you can see where it comes up to just about my belly button. I'm 5'9". But again, actually overall, I'm happy with how it came out. And in case you're saying, hey, look, it's missing a support. Yes, that's intentional. It's so that I can, when I eventually get my MIG or my TIG set up, I have room for my pedal here. So without it being obstructed by a support. So that's why I left out one of the long side supports. So like I said, overall, pretty happy. I learned quite a bit here. I learned to measure a little bit better and to plan a little bit better. The nuts, make sure that the nuts are flush when doing that, because I had that terrible time with the with that one caster. Broke it and whatever. Plan a little bit more ahead as far as the measurements go. Also, I learned, even though my welds were bad to start out with, they did get a lot better along the way, and that's important. Make sure that each weld is better than your last. I had never welded with this wire before. It is, well, it's my Lincoln LE 31MP multi-process. I've never used self-shielded flux core before. There's the wire right there, and especially 035 flux core. I'm used to the 1/16 inch on a much bigger machine, so this is the first project I've ever taken on with this machine and these settings. So overall, it's not horrible. It's gotten better. So that's my project.